Welcome to another episode of 10x Hacks for Startup and Venture Success. This is your host Vida Patil, and I'm bringing you insights of startup and venture success from Silicon Valley and across the globe. In today's podcast, we will be hearing from Sri Lakshmi Reddy, who is the founder director of Keystone Education Group. She is building the next-gen education platform for experiential learning and entrepreneurship as core values. She talks about savvy, self-reflection centric, long-term business model which reflects organic growth and impacts children in the long run. She is a big champion of experiential learning, and she says change, being able to adapt to new methodologies in learning, being a visionary not yourself but also instilling a vision in the team, and being empathy centric are core values to building a disruptive innovation platform in education. So let's hear more from our next gen leader in education, Sri Lakshmi Reddy, founder director of Keystone Education Group. Hello and welcome to another episode of 10x Hacks for Startup and Venture Success. This is your host Vida Patil, and today we have an extremely special woman entrepreneur with us. I'm so proud of her. Her name is Sri Lakshmi Reddy, and at a very young age, she is the founder and the director of Keystone Education Group. This is an education initiative like none other in India. It is bringing top of the line education tools, skills, technologies, and several smart methodologies to schools in India at a very young age. To just give you a hint of what Sri Lakshmi Reddy, our guest, our honored guest today, has done is she has introduced entrepreneurial skills to primary, middle school, and high school students, depending on their ability to execute an entrepreneurship concept. So this is just one of the gazillion things she's done, and her story is very interesting, where she comes from, what she is today. Without further ado, I'd like to bring Sri Lakshmi Reddy on.
Hi. Hi. Hello, Vidya. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I have always admired your work. For us to be able to come on this platform and discuss, my story, it's more than exciting for me.
So Sri Lakshmi, to start with, more than anything else, you're an inspiration to women entrepreneurs. I have seen you like this fresh out of college girl, with bubbling aspirations. And in just like no time, you have not only ventured into married life, you have two kids. So what do you think is Sri Lakshmi? What is she made of? Who is this person? Who is Sri Lakshmi? Behind all this, I'm very fascinated with this. Who is the person?
I always remembered how even when I was preparing for my exams and for my, tests, I used to hold a book, hold a small stick in my hand and with the board behind and behave as if I was a teacher. Right. But I never knew what I really wanted, to be honestly. And I think, sometimes it's destiny, it's, the situation and it's the opportunities that, kind of make you who you are. And what you do and the conscious decisions that you take during those times that will, really enable you to do what you want to do. So I think somewhere as a kid, I always had the entrepreneurship skill or the need and the want to do something other than just sitting in front of a system. Right. I think I can only think of that need for me to just go, do something that is related to people, but not really knowing what it was, back then.
Mm-hmm. And it was interesting. You took up an IT job for a short stint. Your background is in engineering, right? And you specialized in information technology or computer science, I think. And then you moved to so what happened there in your first job?
It's very interesting, right? So, from when you're in, especially when you're in India, your decisions are based on whether you like math or science. Right. Your life decisions are made based on the subjects that you like, which is so unfortunate.
Yes.
But that, like, every other person in India, I also chose engineering because everybody else was also doing that.
Right.
And I did my engineering in electronics and communications. And again, another aspect to observe here is, doesn't matter which engineering field you're into, you will end up taking computer science.
Correct.
Profession. So I never understood, how come electronics communications engineer is ending up to be a software engineer, right?
Correct.
So irrespective of whether you're a civil engineer or an electronics engineer or mechanical engineer, everybody's direction and the stream is towards, becoming a software engineer. And I think that again was because lack of awareness, lack of, opportunities or knowledge, and the environment we were in.
Right.
And only after, working for a company, and I was, just sitting in front of the system for the whole day, not really understanding what I'm working on and the application that I was working on, where was that used. So you don't know the complete story. You would not connect with the whole product or application or anything, especially when you're a fresher. And I got completely disconnected from that, process. I was just going in, coming out, and at some point, I had to just stop myself and say, I can't really do this, and I just quit. And there was no second thought about, quitting my job. Maybe I was fortunate that, I had the privilege of, to be able to quit a job. Maybe not many, would be able to do that for whatever personal, reasons that they would have. And that's when I took time to, just go explore, do what I wanted to do. And first thing that I, wanted to do is just go, do some service. And again, I had no clarity on what kind of service I wanted to do. So I just walked into an orphanage. I said, oh, I'm, a very good student. I did my engineering. So thinking, very high about ourselves just because we are engineers. Walked into an orphanage. I said, I want to teach kids. And then when I started teaching these kids for a couple of months, I started observing that some kids were able to understand what I was teaching and some were not. Then I think I was so fortunate that I realized that there's something wrong with me and not with the kids. So when I'm speaking in the same way, why is that one group of children are able to learn and the other is not able to learn?
Amazing.
So then I realized, there's some problem with me, that I'm so bad at teaching that I'm not able to do justice to everyone. And how especially when you're coming from a very conservative environment, you're always in your own social bubble. Exactly. And I never realized that the government schools are really so different, and there's huge education inequality. Yes. Right? And I've realized education inequalities or the differences and the quality of education, everything only at that point. And that's when I've decided that, okay, this is the space where I want to be in, and this is what I really want to do. That something related to education, and again, but not really, understanding what exactly I should be doing, but something related to education. What best can I do into the education space? So that's how my journey, got into education.
This is so intriguing. When something did not work out, you were thinking out of the box. You are not focusing on the student, but you're focusing on the teacher. What is it the teacher can do differently? So, what were some of the interesting findings there which triggered you to, come to US and pursue an entire degree on that? And I remember you were so excited about all the projects you did in the US. You had specific challenges. You talked about it so passionately. So tell me, what was it specifically in that experience of teaching these kids on government schools which triggered you to take like an entire degree? What was it?
Right. I think it was all about self-reflection. One thing that I constantly was doing even back then, like, at that age, was constantly self-reflecting rather than looking at things from a perspective of, okay, why are they not doing it? Or why is the country like this? Or why are the school systems like this? I was more trying to just work on myself. Okay, why is that I did not know, how there was, education inequality there, and how come I did not know about it? How come I did not know that there were so many government schools around me? How come I did not know that that ultimately it was about me and how I was teaching, but not with the kids. Then I've slowly realized and started reflecting on, okay, how did I study? Why was I always such a good student, and some of my friends who were not really studying so well? So then I've realized that even during that journey, that in our school systems, I was always a topper. I was one of the good students, in the school or college. Maybe not.
Thank you for listening to the podcast 10x Hacks for Startup and Venture Success. This is your host, Vida Patel. I'm bringing you interviews of investors and founders from Silicon Valley and across the globe. This podcast takes a lot of time and effort, so please support this by subscribing to my iTunes, SoundCloud, and LinkedIn podcast pages. Also, please leave your valuable feedback. I will try to make this podcast better with your comments. Thank you so much.
Then I realized that the model that we have in our schools and any education system was only catering to students who always study well. And all the others were just followers. They were just, there, like how we categorized, kids into the top kids, the, medium learners and the low learners, and categorize them in whichever category you want them. So, and that reflection process has always made me to think, rather than, okay, how do we fix this? But rather understanding what are the reasons for this? What is the cause for this? And that had made me to get into research, to get into understanding things from historical perspective, from people's perception, from families, from culture. There are so many reasons that are there for something not to work.
Amazing.
And once I felt that, okay, when you really understand a problem from different contexts, yes, your solutions will not just be idealistic or just be, trying to, fix, the whole complete India's education system, but rather more focused. I think that was the, approach that I had always taken from the beginning.
Oh, amazing. So you're moving from one enlightening moment to another enlightening moment. The first thing I found enlightening about what you said was you just quit the IT job because you found it mundane. There is no big picture. I think most people lack that in their jobs and they stay mediocre. And the second enlightening point you have is you're looking at self-reflection. And most people look at the world from, hey, what's wrong with them, or what's wrong there?
Yes.
Or why isn't it perfect? The third thing which you said, which I really liked, was multiple perspectives. I think I'm going to dig a little bit deep there. And you said it's not about fixing a problem, but, getting into focus. So tell me, today you're the owner of Keystone Education Group. So there are multiple education initiatives there. Back in the US, what did you start off as in your specialization? You have a degree in education administration. So what was it that, brought you to this point of multiple perspectives, in terms of culture or, learning habits or whatnot?
Right. I think I should definitely admit that, it did come with a lot of learning from, the courses that I've attended or the people that I've met even in the US. And I'm not someone who would believe that, okay, Indian education system is like this or US education system like this. And, having, studied in both the places, having worked in both the places, I would say both these countries have these pros and cons in the education system.
Right.
Only the, extent of which each one is varies. But coming back to, my journey as an educator started in the US, and that I felt, I was so fortunate about. And just yesterday, with a couple of, our high school students, I was telling them that most of them in the room, they were saying, oh, we want to become engineers and this and that. And then I just said, yes, do, whatever you really want to do in life in terms of profession, please go ahead and do it. But you should have a story to tell. And how do you really, will be at a point where you have a story to tell? When you go through experiences. You can't create a story, right? You have to go through experiences, so you have a story to tell. And that's when people will start connecting with you. right? Because it has to be realistic and it has to be authentic. I think that is what has happened to me. And my story is, especially in the US, for you to really get into education profession, you should have worked as a teacher or you should have had degrees related to education. But what I had actually done is just written a strong statement of purpose for the university. Of I'm coming from an engineering background and I'm so desperate about, getting into the education space. Now I can't go get into, a teaching job for the kind of visa condition that I have. But inherently how I have the ability to, to teach. And my story was about, what this degree means to me. And this degree for me is not about, getting another good job or getting another good position. This degree was for me to make a difference in the education system in India. Whatever way possible, in whatever small or big way that was possible. And I met this wonderful professor, Miss, Susan Charles at this university. And I was just, talking about what I wanted to do. How when you're young, you have this big dreams of like, okay, tomorrow I'll just do this course, I'll go change India. And then slowly you realize, how some ideas that you have are so idealistic, but I think it's okay to have them. I think it's okay to dream big. I think only though that's when you will, take the top-down approach and start working on something, right?
Right.
I think what really convinced even the university and the professor was my story. And from there, I got into this program, and it was little, because I was among the, I wouldn't say minority is the right word, but there were just one or two Indians, right? And why is it so important for me to tell that? Because I was intimidated. I was intimidated just by the idea of not having, more Indians in the group, and especially we'll have very few people taking education related courses. Either people come to the US for masters in science or masters in, I think this was again back then, not now, in MBAs and MS. So but again that I think was the advantage for me, because I have a different perspective to bring in to the table. Right. I have a different stories to, tell. I have a different context that I could bring in. So at every moment, it was a challenge, but also the opportunity.
Yeah.
The challenge was that, I could be among just one or two who was just representing, coming from a non-education background or coming from a different country or, having a different perspective. But at the same time, you will be heard because you have a different story to tell.
Yeah, this is quite empowering. What you just said, I think it'll help a lot of people, because if I consider my case, all my friends are in corporate jobs. They're drawing large salaries, and here I am following my passion all the time. I feel like an outcast wherever I go. The kind of people I interact with, they're at the top of their fields, and I'm in a different field. So there are a lot of youngsters like that who feel that when they come to US or when they take on something they're not experienced in. I think it's very empowering. The way to empower yourself is think that you have a different perspective to bring to the table. And it applies to women as well, isn't it? There are so few women out there at the top.
Yeah, especially women. And another point that I want to add is it was also about literally making use of every single opportunity that came across. I think that's one thing, if I really want to add to women empowerment, I think a lot of these words are really abstract, right? Entrepreneurship, empowerment, leadership, and there are so many things that you need to do really for us to work towards all these, big terms. But in order to put it in a simple statement, I think all that we need to do is just making use of every single opportunity that comes across your way.
Right.
And that is the only thing that I was constantly doing. And even today, even now, what I really do every single day is just making use of every single opportunity. It could be an interaction with a student. It could be an organization, that I come across. It could be a random person when I'm traveling that I meet. And I can literally, write a book of all those. Today, if I really have to tell how did I start Keystone, of the person that I met when I was working somewhere and how he connected me to another person and how that connection helped. So every time for every entrepreneur, I think it was always about, or it is always about utilizing every single opportunity and not thinking too much about, okay, will this person be useful for me? Will this conversation will be, is useful for me? But just going out there and doing it with an authentic intention of, going to learn something. Yeah.
Amazing. So let's, it's very interesting, this whole story. You said, how did Keystone start? Who was the first person you spoke to? So let's go back there. And why don't you share that story?
So the idea was never to start a school, honestly. But I was more of a teacher's person. I'm a teacher trainer. I'm into curriculum development, strategies, pedagogies. So my research is into teacher education itself. And my professor has been like a huge support system for me. Again, Miss Susan Charles, and she had always encouraged me to just go do whatever I could dream about. Having said that, I think when I came back to India as an educator, I was again new here. Right. So though I was coming back to India, doing some small projects and, going back to the US, unless you really live here and then, kind of do the work, you don't kind of understand. And for the first 1 year, once I moved back, I was all over the place. I was even ready to take up a job for, 15,000 rupees, which is,
not
in
much.
Terms of standards also, it's not much. Okay, holding a degree in the US, and being a researcher also, and having done such amazing work even there, and coming back to India, and I was ready because I was so desperate about just doing something. Right. And I have also realized that just because you have, coming from a certain place or you have done certain courses, people just don't, come to you. Even here, it was a journey where, I had to really work towards it. And that's when I have realized that it's a journey that I have to start all over again as an educator in India. I have to go to every single school, walk into every single institution, see what they're doing, talk to them, understand what they're talking about, tell my story and tell them, and there was also a point. So when I started Keystone Education Group, it was more about teacher trainings and, helping organizations to, transform the way they would teach and learn. And I had no office where I had hired an intern, and her office was in my car. And this intern freaked out, saying, okay, is this real? Is this like a company or what, or not? And so from those kind of experiences to understanding that I really first have to work somewhere. And I have to be associated with an organization. First, understand that, okay, that will give me an opportunity to, really connect with people and have a clear understanding of what's happening with the education system here. Right. So that's when I went ahead and worked with, Dr. Reddy's organization as a, head of programs and academician, heading the academics for, around 25 schools or so. But coming back to, how Keystone happened. So throughout my journey, while I was in India, I was, working with international schools and these low-income schools, private schools, government schools, doing my trainings. And I was constantly talking about innovation. Bringing in, the moment I talk about no textbooks and no exams, or we are going to work with professionals, we are going to do these kind of projects, we are going to, talk about entrepreneurship. Somewhere I always, had a roadblock that no, this is not possible. Like our principal would not agree, or the school would not agree, or no, the parents, will not accept it. So I think I failed at it. And I still remember how after, 1 year of this whole journey, how I came back home and I spoke to my husband that, this whole idea and this whole dream that I had, with which I came back to India, it's a failure.
Gosh.
But today, again, I have a story to tell that I had a failure. Right? And that's when I realized that I didn't have a reference to show. I can just, name like 2 or 3, but in the whole country, there were just 2 or 3, schools that were really doing innovation at a school level. So that's when I thought, okay, let me start my own school, show people how innovation can happen at a school level. And, if I can really demonstrate and if I can really showcase that this is possible, even in India, then I think I can again go back to my, dream of, transforming more number of teachers and students and do that. So I'm just halfway through, what I really wanted to do. Like school was just part of the bigger dream. So that's how, starting the school idea came in.
No, this is a very, very enchanting story, very inspiring story. So I just want to add one reference point to what you're saying. I worked with a very senior psychiatrist. He counsels people whose kid or can have cancer, or who have lost someone, or who are in mental health conditions. So he's built an entire institution to counsel people, because mental health is a stigma. And now he's retired. He's handed it over to a very capable lady CEO. They hire counselors and they send them out into the society to counsel and heal people of emotional wounds. So it's a very new idea. And the one thing he told me was he was implementing a model from Harvard Medical School. He said, if you want to have something so novel, start an organization and have people coming in, graduating, going out, and then implementing it as a business model somewhere. People pay for your service. Only then all these novel ideas. So he wants to implement world peace. He wants to counsel every person who's holding a gun, or who's drinking, or who's fighting at home with his wife, whatever, or adult teen, So that's what he said. And he spent his whole life, a whole 80 years of his life, that's what he does. So I think your first step is pretty, I think, headed in the right direction there.
Yeah, long way to go, but I think I think it is also important for us to really realize that sometimes you might also have to step back from your bigger dream.
Yeah,
right.
Certainly, yeah.
And then just realize that taking these smaller steps and also, executing those steps efficiently will give you that confidence that, okay, I can also, execute the bigger goal.
Exactly.
So it's important that sometimes we accept our failure, and that's when you will, you will take a huge step forward when you accept your failure.
Yeah. So this is another enlightening moment. You'll take a huge step forward when you accept that you failed. Amazing. This is very truly enlightening, I say, because this will release a lot of people who are holding themselves back, to bounce back.
Oh, yes.
So, there's another concept in innovation. It's called bigger vision and MVP. You are executing MVP. MVP is a smaller dream in the big dream. In the business finance, it's called MVP. So if your MVP is successful, then you will scale. You'll start scaling your idea. So that, sorry to butt in, but there's so much we have in common. I just want to keep sharing my idea.
Yes.
So, I wanted to ask, here you are with the institution. You just told me how you started. You still have to tell me who was the first person you met. Was it the intern or was it somebody?
Yeah, of course it was my husband. Because I needed support system.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. So what is family like in this situation when you create the dream?
Yeah, I think how much of I'm always confused with this whole concept of, feminism or, women in business and all of that. Because to each person, to each woman, they have their own story. And for some women, just getting the husband's support is like a big deal. For someone, challenging them and like, okay, I don't really care about it, but I still want to, go ahead and do this. It's my own decision, and I want to do it, is empowerment. For someone else, taking the whole family along with them in their journey is empowerment. So I think there is no clear definition to what is the right approach, but end of the day, to make sure that you're also able to influence your own family is the way that I would look at it. Right. And Pushkin, right? So Pushkin was always someone who believed in entrepreneurship, and who believed in my vision as well. And he had shared my vision, and when I shared this idea, he was so happy and excited about it. And because it's a big deal for me, because he had to let go of his profession for my vision, and make it as a shared vision. And for him, he was also at a very high level leadership position at Amazon at that point. And for him, it's again starting his career all over again.
Right.
So I think I did a decent job in convincing him. And together it became our journey than just my journey alone. And from there, through a friend, we met, another. So I think this is one thing I really want to talk about here. Usually when people want to start something, how they really go and research about that particular idea everywhere. Let's say you want to start a coffee shop, right? You would go to every single coffee shop that's out there and see what they're all doing and see what they're not doing. And then, I've seen most, people, whoever wants to start something, they do a lot of research on what's existing. Yes. Right? And talk to a lot of, coffee shop owners or, founders. For some reason, I was always adamant about doing it. I didn't really want to meet a lot of people, who founded schools or who were, doing whatever they were doing. I think I just met like just one or two people, that too only the ones who were doing innovative work in India. And the rest I did not want to meet because I didn't want to hear a no, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hear, no, I think parents are not yet ready. And I didn't want to hear, no, I think it's very challenging in India. So I just met, another one or two people, and I started hearing this and said, so the idea was, if I really want to go meet people who are already established in this kind of, zone, in the school zone, if I really want to hear to them, then if whatever innovation that I was talking about, then they should have done it already. If they hadn't done it, then I can understand the reason. So there is no reason for me to go and understand why they did not do it. Right? It was about me to, I think it is in my, nature that I just want to go do it. I just want to start it. And I always believe there is always space for everyone in any idea, as long as it is authentic and it adds value to people.
Yes.
Maybe the numbers might vary, the number of years you might have to work towards may vary, the logistics might be different, the money that you would make would be different, or in any business. So and I felt I was always suggested, no, go meet these people, no, go work with them. I just ignored all of that, and I said, I strongly believe that this would work, and I just want to go do it. And even if it doesn't work, I want to figure out a way how to make it work.
Amazing.
So that's how the journey started.
So Srilakshmi, as you were saying, right, I'm doing this, I'm working with these investors. I'm writing a book on how to start do a startup. So this exercise, what you told was market research you did not want to do because you fall in the category called disruptive innovation. Because Steve Jobs never asked anybody whether they wanted a touch screen. So that's kind of what you're doing. It's called disruptive innovation. And this whole exercise of talking to people, and you said that if you're adding value, it's called positioning. If you're doing something which is adding value, you're in a segment. So you're almost getting a mini MBA here as you're doing Keystone. So,
Yeah,
so it's good to see, these business concepts. You say it so beautifully in your own words because it's your experience. It comes out so nicely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So anyway,
But it takes a lot of courage,
yes,
to do so. And it did come in with a lot of, support from family too, especially, my husband Pushkin. Um, but I think it is also about constantly reflecting on your own work.
yes,
When you're not really ready to go out there and talk to every single person, what do you think about my idea? What do you think about my idea? If you start doing it with yourself, what do I think about my own idea? And every day, if you start, and I think your customers, whoever that is, will be, always be ready to give you that feedback. And even there, you only take what you want, and you will not, take what you don't want to hear.
right.
But it is challenging because you're always worried about how this is going to, work upwards. I think it's a constant balance of did we learn something from this experience, and how do I improve from here? So that constant cycle of intervention and improvement is definitely required when you take such steps.
Yeah, this whole thing is incredible. I mean, you're so young. You and Pushkin, you took this step. It's just
Yeah.
hitting me, the risk factor, the risk appetite both of you have. And thank you for listening to the podcast 10x Hacks for Startup and Venture Success. This is your host, Vida Patel. I'm bringing you interviews of investors and founders from Silicon Valley and across the globe. These podcasts take a lot of time and effort, so please support my efforts. You can click on the link bit.ly/donate Vida podcast. Partial proceeds of this donation will go to OSAT, or One School at a Time. They replace dilapidated school buildings in India, SSCF dealing with pediatric cancer, and Akshay Patra feeding 1.8 million midday meals to school children. Life Moves Initiative providing shelter, food, and amenities to the homeless. Again, the link is bit.ly/donate Vida podcast. Thank you very much for your support. The sheer scale of your vision, you're disrupting an education system. It's going to shake a lot of people out of their comfort zone. Once Keystone starts scaling, I can definitely say that. What were some of the challenges you faced, other than hearing no from your existing incumbents, or people saying this is not possible, or your own customers saying, hey, this is not working? What were like the real challenges? We got through the family part. You said you convinced them. So after that,
Yeah. I think the challenge was, more about, when you have a very idealistic or a very, extremely innovative idea, to enable it, you will see that skill set is a problem, right? You have the family, you have the financial support system, and you're being very realistic about your financial approach in the whole model. And you know how much to expect, each year. But again, if it is only you who is innovative, and no one in the system can match to your skill set, that's a big challenge. Right. And because especially in India, it's very difficult to find people who have those kinds of, skill set. Then you will be the one who will end up doing everything. Even the way the receptionist should think, or the way a grade 2 teacher should think about a certain project, and the way, you want, a certain, leadership to, conduct. So everything, is a challenge, because the expertise that you come with, the kind of innovation that you have in your mind. See, for example, if you're starting in a technology company, right? You would hire, okay, I want this guy who's very innovative and can do this artificial intelligence idea and come up with. And how Steve Jobs is always mentioning that you don't need people to whom you have to tell on how to do their work. You need people who are smart, who will tell you how to get the work done.
Exactly.
That was always missing for me. That was always missing, because we never in India we don't have training institutes. We don't have like a strong teaching institutions to produce good teachers, right? And there's a huge dearth for quality, huge dearth for good quality teachers. I can only pick from what is available.
So
right?
what about the IIMs and IITs, or the PhDs who come with
There's no education stream there, right? The only education university that I can mention currently is Azim Premji University, which is again recently, just a couple of years ago, that they have started. And so I had to really think a lot out of the box. Or sometimes when you see that you are stuck with people who are not innovative enough to that challenge, what we have done is we've created this whole teacher training institute within the system.
Wow.
So you would see, so see, either you find right people and like you will just put them on job to do what you want them to do, or you have a system within the place. You take the closest person that you think would work for you and put them into the system and train them.
Amazing.
Right. So these are the only two ways that you can enable this. So, but that was the biggest challenge, and that still remains a challenge. But now we have figured out a way to, how to really make them, capable of doing what we had set up to do. I think that's the only challenge that I can think of. Otherwise, see, in terms of convincing parents or convincing this community to believe in this kind of model, I always, especially if, even Pushkin also, both of us always believe that it has to happen organically. Let us not have like, okay, we have to reach this number. That's when we are successful, or we have to reach. No, we were always realistic about it. And especially when you come in with such an alternative approach, then, or not just alternative, but also progressive and innovative approach, you can't have people just, flocking towards you and say, oh, wow, this is great. Let's, 99.9% of the people are moving in one direction and we are moving in another direction. So how do you expect, everyone to... So when you accept the reality and understand that this takes time, but our influence on the education system is not just through educating those, kids. Our influence today is, so many other teachers that we are influencing, so many other educators who visit us and going and making changes in their school on how they want to do it, right? So we did not look at impact of Keystone only from a number of children that are there. From that perspective, the impact is at different levels. So yeah,
I like the way you describe this impact. So we have this impact metrics, and whenever an organization is scaling, if you need to raise money, you have to showcase impact. And one of the ways they do it is they stay within the organization, the first layer of customers, and they stop there. I think you're creating an ecosystem for generating impact.
Yes.
Which is so everything you said was so refreshing. I know we are at the end of the hour. Everything starting from the self-reflection mode, and then stepping out of your career, you look you're really thinking about authentic stories there and experiences. That was refreshing. And when you're hit with failures, new changes coming. So accept the failure. Everything you said was refreshing, including the decision you and Pushkin took about organic growth. So these are all, I think, new generation leaders. New generation leaders sculpting a new world. Because in Microsoft, it is like grow big or go home. These are the kind of, or build fast, break things. Facebook. This is the kind of vision which is driving scale, but you are not buying into that. And I also like, you don't take no for an answer. These are all amazing, refreshing insights. So with that, I want to ask, this is more a business related question. I know you're very creative and lively, and business kind of restricts you, but I'm sure a lot of women entrepreneurs want to hear from you about this. Have you ever raised money, or uh, what do you tell people about your business when you pitch? You're so innovative, you're so new. Like, what is it like for somebody like you to raise money? What does it take for you to raise money?
I think fortunately, I have really not gone through that journey.
Right.
So I might not be the best person to answer that question. But again, having worked with education organizations where I had to kind of also play that role. I think it's very challenging because especially when you're working in service industry, it's not a product, right?
Mm-hmm.
And service industries are, in a way where you can't really define the end product, or you can't really give a clear, okay, this is the number, right? And when you're taking an innovative journey, any innovator that you can talk about, right? The scaling only happens at a very later stage. Right. But foundations will have to be very strong when you're innovative.
Exactly.
Right? And if it's not like an extremely innovative idea, but a good entrepreneurship idea, and then you're doing the pitching and then you're showcasing numbers, I think it's very easy to connect numbers, idea, and the timeline. But in these kind of service-related journeys, you have to be very, very practical about what you talk about as an end result. Right? Because though, Pushkin is also the chairman of the company. And when we, really discuss, I have to really tell him how many, what can we really expect each year, right? When you're really, putting in so much of, I wouldn't even call it investment when you're putting in so many funds into this. So when you're very clear, so what we have really done is, if I have to just mention it in a single statement, we've done like a 10-year plan. Right? Rather than like a 2-year plan or a 3-year plan, which doesn't really work. So that when we have done a 10-year plan, we have really understood that that's such a long journey it is going to be, and how patient you will have to be to meet each milestone in terms of, funds, or in terms of the numbers and everything. And at least that will, keep the people who are investing in your idea very well informed. Right? So not every person who comes in might want to just know, okay, I don't care, but I just want this to be done in 2-3 years, right? You will definitely have people who will believe in your idea. All that they would expect you to is keep them very well informed and be realistic about it. Right. So I think these two things would work.
So again, Srilakshmi, such a refreshing approach. I'll tell you why. I worked with a business magnate here, a lady in Silicon Valley, and she talks about something called patient modeling. She says this is what is required in the new governments. These 5-year governments, they are not achieving anything because the new government has new plans. And as soon as the government comes to an end, the tenure, the next government will undo everything which is done and do something else. So this patient modeling is what is required for building the next generation of whatever it is you're building, education or infrastructure, whatever. So you have got everything right. Everything you said is maverick. It's new.
I'm just checking all your MBA boxes, I guess.
Oh no! You're checking the megapreneur boxes, the bigger boxes. So this whole culture of scaling fast and growing big fast, quick money by exits, IPOs. This is just taking a turn now. People are becoming more realistic about things which matter. So I like the fact you said this service industry. Why didn't you say it's a product? The education, because edtech platforms, edtech tools, curriculums, they're all products, isn't it?
Yeah. See, again, that's one thing. And I'm an advisor to some, education technology companies as well. And as an advisor, even to those companies, I always try to bring that, perspective into their minds that end of the day, you're working with children, right? Children don't behave or don't conduct, or they do not, you cannot expect them to behave the way you want them to behave, right? And when you're working with children, you have to be very compassionate, empathetic. There should be kindness, and a lot of these words. When you're very aggressive, as an education entrepreneur or edtech entrepreneur, whatever. When you miss these things, I think I have seen people who have taken that journey by missing these elements, and at a later stage, I have seen so many realize that end of the day, you will see that it is not adding value. You might still be very successful in terms of market, in terms of business, but it's a very brief and see, after Khan Academy, there were so many which had come. But if I have to look at the impact, yes, maybe in terms of business, you can just put them in the graph and say, oh, this particular business is still the top and Khan Academy is still here and all. But when we talk about children and when we talk about education, we still need to understand that we have to first prioritize, being empathetic to what we are working towards. That it's children and they are not a product.
Yeah.
And if this element is missing, then I can 100% be sure that long term you will see that doesn't work.
Yeah. So, this is people as a product, but you don't even want to call them a product. So is this so if people are improving, so is this a lifestyle approach? Are you improving them as people improve their lifestyle by giving them better tools to live better?
I think it's the experiences, right? It's not even lifestyle, it's the experiences. And and why is that we see so much increase in number of well-being coaches? We see there's a huge rise in number of yoga teachers. There's a huge rise in number of, people who are talking about, well-being and mindfulness coaching and, all these stuff. That means there is a need for that. So anyone who's in the education space, doesn't matter whether you're in the tech industry, you're directly serving children, you're a teacher, you're an educator, whichever role you're playing that is indirectly or directly connected to children, the decisions that you are taking, the steps that you're, creating, ultimately these children are going to go through these experiences. And imagine from morning till evening, kids are with schools and with these programs or with these solutions or with these applications, whatever that we are developing.
Right.
And it's a long journey, right? When you say a product, let's say if I buy a product, it's like I use it for 5 minutes and I like it, I don't like it. Or, how after using a particular product, maybe on my skin, for continuously for 4-5 years, I would know what it had actually done to me, right? Which we usually don't do. Like, you keep changing. I can any product that you can talk about, you can always see that you change that. But once you put kids into a system, they are there in that system for such a long period, and it will have like a huge impact. But the thing is that we don't really measure these things that easily, right? And how many of us in the education industry actually go through this long research papers and the impact that it had on it, or the end results, because of that. So very, very few. Right. And we're only looking in that instant. Right now, my kid had attended this 1-hour program with this particular application, and in another 1 month, the result is this. But all those 1 hour results, if you pile up, and after 10 years, if you look at a child, he is what he is, or she is what she is today because of all those collective experiences. And you're playing a role in those experiences. Your product is playing a role. You as a teacher are playing a role. Your school is playing a role. So I think it is very important that we consciously make an effort to think that we are not working with products. We are not looking at children as products or just like end users or clients or customers, but more as beings, which you're, all that you can do is, create great experiences for them. good
Amazing.
experiences for them. Yeah.
Yeah, so that becomes DNA of their behavior, and then
Yeah.
evolve as great human beings, and they have
Yeah.
strong human beings. So, one
Yeah.
of the
So,
things you.
Vidya, I want to do interrupt you here. Don't you think that the kind of education that we had gone through, I don't want to undermine it, but it did add some value. But so much of the other side, if you look at it, so much of unlearning had to happen post that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
After my engineering and after coming back to the US, or even post, either I was in a workspace, so much of unlearning had to happen of everything that I had learned the way I had learned,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
hopefully our kids should not go through that unlearning.
Yeah, yeah. Such an amazing thought. I had not, reflected on that point. I spent so much time unlearning things. I wondered why I slowed down, because it was not making sense at all to me what I learned and what the world is like. So,
Right.
so people like you are bridging that gap, thankfully, and
Yeah.
thankful to people like you and Pushkin. You brought a very interesting angle in the rise of yoga teachers and mindfulness coaches, because that's where the unlearning is happening. we are
Yeah.
we are switching off from everything, and we are looking at the
Right.
world. So what are
Right.
you doing in your school about
Right.
those initiatives? Have you thought about them? Or
Yeah. I think for anything, we have a very comprehensive approach at the school. Again, nothing works as okay. Unfortunately, in majority of schools today, for everything there's a solution. Oh, kids are under stress. Oh, we have this great wellness program. What do kids do? Once in a month, they hear to this person about yoga and meditation. And so this instant solutions and instant programs will only work with top 5 children in every school, top 5% children in every school. I think every parent and teacher and educator around the world should accept that in every classroom around the world, you will have those top 5% children who are inherently very smart, very good, well behaved, teachers spare. You say anything and everything, they're ready to listen. You put them in any environment, they will survive, right? But what I'm really talking about, leaving that 5%, what about the rest of them? Do we have solutions, and have you created enough experiences? Do you have enough experts to really make this 95% people, students, to enable them to what we want them to, really be or go through. So that is our goal at Keystone all the time. If we talk about social emotional learning at Keystone, we're not talking about it as an activity. We're talking about it as an experience. And to put it in a very simple way, we are providing an environment where our children will go through experiences. And when children go through these experiences every single day, with a dedicated amount of time given to it, over a couple of years, these experiences will become habits, conscious habits. Right. And once it becomes a habit, we are confident that they are ready for the real world.
Amazing.
So that is the approach that we always take. So creating a very conducive environment for experiences, and for experiences turning them into, now I'm not using the word skill set here because it has been used and abused everywhere.
Habit is a safe word.
Yes, you can call doing math as a habit, or you can call, even if you want to consciously talk about, a conflict with your friend, right? You want to talk about how you're fighting with your parents, and maybe you're not respecting, or you're using abusive words, or you're not working, hard enough, or there's so many things, that a child needs to learn and go through and experience in a school environment. So all our programs, right from social emotional learning, the project approach, entrepreneurship, every program that we talk about is curated in such a way that these are experiences for them, with real people from the community, and not just the teachers, professionals, wellness experts, anybody that we could think of. And when they're there in this kind of system for a long period, they would go out I wouldn't say like, okay, they're all equipped with all this skill set and they're perfect. No, we are not trying to make robots or perfect human beings. We're just exposing them to all these things. Each one will come out with their own understanding of it. At least we would be happy if they are, using these habits consciously, and they'll take informed decisions. That's all. That's the only expectation we have.
Amazing, amazing. This is going back to our ancient education system, our Hindu education system, or the Indian education system. The Chinese ancient education system was all about self-reflection. So we're going back to the roots here, and it's very calming. It's very calming when I hear it. There is no, there's no unease. There is no anxiety here.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
You don't even have to, right? Yeah, I think even about math, like doing math, it's make it as a habit. Like you're just exercising your brain and look at it that way, rather than, okay, I just need to pass my third grade and move in there, or no, I need to go to this Olympiad exam though. So if your objective is about understanding why you're doing it, and that the whole reason for you to do that is for you to learn something, then it will happen. Only the level at which it will happen to each child is different.
Yeah, and like you just mentioned, it's just, if you think of it as an exercise, a lot of genius people who had great grasp of abilities, they were playing. They picked up a lot of stuff in the form of play. So you're kind of creating an experiential play-like environment. So you have really big tasks on your hand. So, I want to ask, this is a big change. This is a big disruption. Obviously, there are business metrics, quantification metrics. You have to deal with all of that. I just want to find out if there was anybody who's done something close to this you've seen in real life, who inspires you every day, other than your professor, that lady Charles. Anybody else? Anybody else you've seen who's done?
Who had influenced me? Who had influenced me? You mean?
Yeah, like closer to the vision you're executing, not
there are a lot of schools, like Green School Bali in Indonesia is one school that I always look up to, the way they have done it. But our challenge is different because we are not coming in with such public presence. Right. When a famous personality, imagine Steve Jobs, talking about an innovative school. You don't even have to convince anyone. Right?
There was a TED Talk also. It was quite popular. It was introduced in a TED Talk, and that gave a world platform. I remember that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think Green School Bali is one, and long back I think even Rishi Valley schools, right? Of course, the whole idea, the philosophy that we got in. Only thing is how, back then when these schools were started, to how well they balance the current context. Right. And it's more philosophical, I would say, rather than innovative. But still, it's, out of normal, whatever they do. So there are very good, examples around. But the challenge that, we have is we are trying to be very, very progressive, rather than philosophical. So, that way I would say, Keystone is unique in, what it is doing. And of course, in the US, there are many schools, High Tech High, New Tech, New York, and just to name a few. There are educators, who are doing, and there's Real School Budapest. But again, all these schools are like sister schools of Green School Bali. I think that those are the few schools that I'm, influenced by.
This is such a philosophical topic. I can think of a lot of philosophers, Paulo Coelho, Sadhguru, the Chinese Confucius. It just comes to that central thread of self-introspection. So you're in both worlds, the inner world and outer world. You're operating everywhere. So great. I think you're doing all the right things. There were so many enlightening, like aha moments. I was trained by one of these international public speakers, and she would say you should have a lot of aha moments in your story. Then people buy
Yeah.
into it. So I think I have like eighth or ninth aha moment in the last 1 hour. So I'm totally sold. So I'm sure everybody who's listening to you will be at some point if you continue to, with this trajectory, if you keep moving. So
Sure.
with that, any parting thoughts you have to your audience? I know you're not a big fan of this woman man entrepreneur thing, so I want to ask you
Yeah.
about it. But any
Okay.
parting thought, anything you want to share with them from your end?
Right.
Yeah.
I think anyone, if I have to really address to, women in terms of entrepreneurship, I think it is just about believing in your idea. I think every idea works. I don't know. I'm really crazy about it. Any idea will work as long as you're very honest, genuine, and authentic about it. And I think sometimes you just need to be ready. So for me, literally every single day, I'm ready to learn something new, right? And if you're ready to learn every single day, and if you're ready to, create an environment, and also as an entrepreneur, you have to constantly make sure that the team that is with you should also be ready to learn every day. Yes. And what I've really seen with some entrepreneurs is that they are so amazing and they are so creative and they are ready to do anything. But the team that is, with them are not influenced enough. And they are not ready to change, or so after 6-7 years of your journey into entrepreneurship, you realize that somewhere you're, kind of influenced by them, and they're no more ready to change. They're not being flexible. They're not being influenced. So every single day, if you can tell your team that anytime anything can happen and you should be ready to change. Right. So a change should be the constant thing, and learning should be the constant thing, and being realistic about, your vision. These are the three things I would say somebody should keep in mind, and empathetic. So if we have these 4 things with us and go with that into, our everyday, into our work every day with all our team, I'm sure it would work. Yeah.
Amazing. Great. I will call it Sri Lakshmi's model. I'm going to put empathy in the center, and yes. Then change, and then yes. Learning, and then being realistic. So that's going to be Sri Lakshmi's model.
Probably you should add unlearning, because that's what we do at Keystone. Whatever we've learned last year, we ask them to unlearn everything and do everything fresh for the coming year.
So learning, double arrow, unlearning. Keep going back. Okay, that's the Sri Lakshmi's learning triangle with empathy in the center. So let's publish together.
Yes,
something you accomplished there. It's all coming so easy to you, like you're born with this. But I know it's not easy. So, I just want to thank you immensely, Sri Lakshmi, for your time. I know you're so busy with your 2 kids. You have this huge organization you're running. You have a family to take care of. I'm immensely thankful to you. And please keep coming again. We will have lots to learn from you.
Looking forward to learning more from you. And thank you so much for the opportunity. I think sometimes when you also get the opportunity to talk, it's a reflection process where, I never literally sit and think about the whole journey like this.
Amazing.
So it had given me opportunity to, think about my journey and also learn from you as well. And thank you so much for the opportunity. And I really appreciate it.
Same here. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the podcast 10x Hacks for Startup and Venture Success. This is your host, Vida Patel. I'm bringing you interviews of investors and founders from Silicon Valley and across the globe. These podcasts take a lot of time and effort, so please support my efforts. You can click on the link bit.ly/donate Vida podcast. Partial proceeds of this donation will go to OSAT, or One School at a Time. They replace dilapidated school buildings in India, SSCF dealing with pediatric cancer, and Akshay Patra feeding 1.8 million midday meals to school children. Life Moves initiative providing shelter, food, and amenities to the homeless. Again, the link is bit.ly/donate Vida podcast. Thank you very much for your support and see you next time.